मेरी मोहब्बत को कबूल करो उषा। मैं तुम क्या हुआ? Cut.
Shyam Benegal's subsequent partnership with Shashi Kapoor realized his most stylish period. Junoon was based on a short story by Ruskin Bond, A Flight of the Pigeons.
लानत है इन कबूतरों पर, खबीस, मकरूह, दोज़खी परिंदे। इनकी बहबूदी में हमारे सिपाहियों की मौत लिखी है। हजार बार लानत है इन पर, इब्लीस की औलाद। देखना हो रहा मैं। रुक जाओ, छोड़िए मुझे। रुक जाओ, नहीं तो मैं तुम्हें जान से मार डालूंगा। इन्हें बचाने के लिए आप मुझ पर हाथ उठाएंगे, मुल्क के लिए नहीं। इन्हीं खुदगर्जियों ने तो हमें दगा दिया जावेद भाई, हम दिल्ली हार गए हैं। दगा।
To create a sense of period, you have to fall on certain kinds of schemes, which makes people feel that they have been transported into that century or that particular period within the same century, into that decade or whatever. Now, in this case, the whole emphasis was to create a certain kind of warmth in the color schemes.
We were trying to deal with a period which has been documented very well in lithographs, in prints, the British period. And we didn't want to totally follow that style, yet since the period has become identified with those visual representations, we didn't want to move away from it either. So we tried to find a balance between the two. And I think that worked out very, very well.
But Junoon is more than just style and polish. The obsessive love of a Pathan soldier for an English girl is set against the tragic backdrop of the 1857 Sepoy Mutiny. In the understated, quiet tone of the film, Benegal avoids major compromises to popular cinema.
It's your own sensibility, your reaction to something, to a story or whatever. I do use melodrama, but I use it when it is credible, not when it is incredible.
The stylishness of Junoon and Kalyug was further extended by Benegal in a film he made in 1986. Trikal is set in the liberation days of Goa. It moves backwards and forwards between time planes and captures exquisitely the social and political ambience.
In this particular house, this kind of the house it was, the kind of color scheme that was worked out for it, based on what it was like when people actually lived in that house, about 30 or 40 years before. Nitish had worked out the schemes based on the motifs that the house actually had. And once we had worked out all those color schemes, we felt that if we were going to shoot night sequences in this place, then it would be wonderful to try and shoot with oil lamps. Now that wasn't very practical. So what we did was, we said we can shoot in candlelight. Now we had 400 ASF film. It was possible to do that. So Ashok did a few tests. And once those tests were done, we found that we could expose and we could get the kind of depth we wanted by using certain kind of candles. So all the night sequences in the film were shot actually in candlelight, except to use HMI lights for, to give a certain kind of depth in the landscape. You get a certain moonlit quality and so on and so forth. But in the interiors and for the characters, we had nothing but candles to light them up.
जाओ बेटा। डॉक्टर परेरा, मुझे लगता है ये सब अफवाहें हैं।
नहीं, अफवाहें नहीं है। पुल और सरकारी इमारतों के आसपास बारूद जमा किया जा रहा है। इंडियन आर्मी आएगी तो पोर्चुगीज सरकार सब कुछ उड़ा देगी। पूरा गोवा चलेगा।
डॉक्टर परेरा की फूल मालाएं तैयार हैं इंडियन आर्मी के लिए।
Once again, the visual approach Benegal employs complements the nostalgic recreation of a period which is coming to an end in a subdued but effective manner.
Another thing that I felt was very important for that film was to get the character of languidity, you know. Life in that sort of situation is a little more languid, certainly on the surface. And to get that, I needed a certain fluid kind of style. So we used a lot of the spider dolly, and we had these very long takes. We didn't cut too much when we were shooting our sequences. All the staging of the scenes were done in a manner where we wouldn't keep chop, 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 chop all the time. Trikal and Bhumika were not, they were narratives. At base is the narrative, a skeletal structure on which you have to place something on. But the plot is not necessarily of great importance to me. People are, characters are, you know. What emerges, what changes. I'm more interested in looking at the process, because process is probably the most elusive thing to register. You can register a pre-changed and a changed condition, but the process of change itself is very difficult to register, and it's fascinating to look at this. It's much like a shadow of the sun, you know, when the lengthening of shadows. You don't see the shadows actually lengthening. You see it when it has lengthened or when the shadow is short.
This process of change has been documented time and again in Benegal's films. In Susman, he studies the impact of the coming of the power looms and the modern textile buyers into the world of the traditional weavers. Although the film was not enthusiastically received, it remains, in terms of its sensitivities, consistent with his concern for the rural poor.
बीमा के वैसा बनाएंगे ना घर का ना घाट का
In 1982, Shyam Benegal made a film financed by the West Bengal government. Arohan typifies the social commitment which has dominated his films. A commitment which is not the polemical stand of an activist, but the vision of a poet, capturing the trauma that rural poverty and oppression bring in their wake.
Paji! 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 मैं तेरी माँ हूँ, मेरी तरफ देख, तुझे नहीं पहचाना, Paji! Paji!
Okay, let's hurry with
In the last few years, Benegal has made major documentaries. First, a feature-length film on Satyajit Ray, followed by a co-production with the Russians on Jawaharlal Nehru. Recently, he has been at work on the television serial Bharat Ek Khoj. The serial is an ambitious recreation of Indian culture and history and is based on the book Discovery of India by Pandit Nehru.
When I took it up, I didn't think it would turn out to be as complex, as difficult, or as big. You know, I didn't really anticipate the problems that would be there in trying to do this. But the excitement of it is fantastic, because you see, I'm extending myself beyond the areas in which I was working so far. It is one of the most difficult things I've ever attempted to do. And I can't believe that anything will be more difficult than this at this juncture of time.
Those familiar with his body of work insist that Benegal's films have been distinguished by an effort to reach out to a larger audience. He has done this without compromising his sensibilities or trivializing his own concerns as a filmmaker. In doing so, he has evolved a bridge between art and popular cinema. This, perhaps, is his major contribution as an artist to the world of Indian cinema.